are present and accounted for, so we can probably roll into the meeting. Today's meeting is going through the agenda for tomorrow's meeting, and we'll all see ourselves again. So, Doug, would you like to take us through the agenda?
Sure, be happy to.
Thank
Should
you.
be able to. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yep.
Every time I share my screen, it repositions. I just need a quick second here to. I'll just a side note here real quick. Kathy and I had a meeting yesterday with a number of residents from Lakewood Meadows. We did record it. Sarah's posting it for me this morning with the link for the YouTube. I'll send that out to you guys. There were, Kathy, I don't know, what would you say, 40 people approximately from Lakewood Meadows that joined us?
Something like that, yep.
It was about the land acquisition stuff, so. Anyway.
Did they have an overwhelming feeling one way or another on the land acquisition?
With regard to the, so this is mostly with regard to RSM property because it borders the Acorn Hill pieces. So most of them were concerned with traffic going through their backyards. But no one was completely opposed to it. Those that were leaning towards that are the ones that live closest to it. So by the end, they were much more, at least, understanding of the whole thing, and not so anti the whole process. I think there was a lot to digest. I think it was a very good presentation. Thank you, Doug. I told Doug every time I watch it, I digest more. So if you get a chance, just with regard to that particular piece, I think it was very informative and laid everything out. So everyone appreciated it. I haven't gotten any negative feedback from it in terms of, but people do want to watch the presentation again, and everyone was very thankful for the opportunity. So
I did get
Commissioner Point property.
No, that's the other one, 3950 County Road 16.
One near German Brothers.
The RSM piece. That one, I did get, Kathy, I think we got an email from Dean this morning. I'll send that out to you guys here in a little bit. He said he had much better understanding, I think, generally, to sum up the email, and I think it sounded like was much more in favor. And I did have 3 phone calls after the meeting. I love our residents. I had 3 different phone calls after the meeting that said, I wanted to ask something, but I didn't really want to ask it in the meeting. So they but all of them, it was just clarification stuff. And they all said, well, yeah, that all makes sense. So generally speaking. So,
and Doug, when you say Dean, who do you mean?
One of the residents.
His name is Dean Smith. His property is right. It's right parallel. His backyard is parallel to where
the path would be.
The most western portion of the path, I would say.
Okay.
I know Dean.
All right.
Okay. Let's see. So I don't think this is going to take a ton of time to go through this agenda.
No, I don't think so either.
I do have a question or something we need to talk about, hopefully at the end of this. Okay, this is just communication. Jumping down. So this isn't finance, but Kathy, you want to make an announcement?
Sure. So I've asked Jared to be my deputy supervisor. Thank you, Jared, for being willing to put up with me. That's the first thing.
Thank you.
And he's certainly listened to me whine and complain enough. For the other appointment, town historian, the town history team would still like to interview a few more people. We've interviewed 2 people, and I told them if they would like to, they feel that there's more places to look for people, and they wanted to pursue that. So that's where we are in that.
So then jumping down to the next section here, no presentations at this meeting, continued public hearings. We have 2 of them. The one thing, and Kathy, we can talk about this, but one of the things when we get to this point tomorrow in the public hearing, I think it would be very helpful based on comments that I've heard, if we really try to take these 2 public hearings separately as we have had them listed. I've had people getting confused between the 2 properties that have contacted me and stuff. And I think maybe if we try to focus on one at a time, it might be easier for people to kind of understand. And people themselves get confused. They want to make a comment about one and then it's the other and blah, 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 blah. So anyway.
Will do.
Okay. jumping right into resolutions. Our standard budget transfers. Most of these, Kate, I don't know if you want to touch on these, but most of these were small. Like I looked at the list, most of them were even under $100. So.
Yeah, they were mostly just end of the year transfers. Payroll lines sometimes will have 8 cents or 10 cents and things like that, where we just have had a little bit of overages. And then with the final run of bills for 2020 coming through this month, there were a handful of our contractual lines that just needed a little boost to cover some of the stuff that went through, but nothing major. Everything was very small. And there you go. You can see, I think I tried to separate as much as possible the ones that came in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was personnel. The first one's personnel. We pulled from a couple different places to make up the funds, but that was to cover the personnel. And then the second one here is for the year-end expenses. The town board contractual line, I have to say, all those public hearings at the end of the year really did put that. If you can see the after total is $764.40. That's the total expenses for that line, which is a little higher than normal, but just something to keep in mind.
We did, for the 21 budget, we did increase that line in anticipation of public hearings, as well as after conversations with Gary and the stuff that the ordinance committee is doing. We put in extra money in that line for like the legal notices and the things relating to ordinances when we do ordinances, since those are technically town board expenses, so that you could see that a little more cleanly. And then the rest of those. So, okay. Jump back to page 3. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, this next one, I wish that I should have planned this better to have somebody with us on this. I'll try to get somebody from the ECB, Gary, on tomorrow. There's been an issue with gypsy moth. I'm sure some of you might be a little bit familiar with this, but there's been quite an issue with gypsy moth this past year. We actually saw down at Ononda, we saw just massive like gypsy moth clusters and eggs on the trees, on the buildings, on the cabins, all over everywhere. And our tree team has been discussing this. The Parks Committee discussed it a little bit, but mostly it was the tree team and our Environmental Conservation Board. And there is an entity that the DEC is actually recommending to treat areas, and it's this pesticide known as BTK that takes care of the caterpillars in their larvae stage. And our Environmental Conservation Board has reviewed it, and they're actually recommending that this actually came from them. They were, everybody's always obviously trying to be careful about anytime you use anything, but the flip side is if we don't do something and we have another bad year with the gypsy moth, we could lose potentially many of our trees, especially on the uplands at Ononda. So we've been in talk with the Region 8 DEC forester. 2 methods are being recommended. And we've also been having conversations with Finger Lakes Community College and about them coming over some of the students there with the forestry program and doing some sampling and doing a survey of the situation. But this resolution that's before you does seeker as well as would authorize us to spend some money to actually do aerial spraying on the uplands at Ononda. About that 70 acres plus or minus on the uplands that's forested. So I know that's a little different. We don't normally do that sort of a thing, but the concern, and there's a lot there in that resolution, but the concern is if we do nothing, there could be a pretty devastating impact to the trees if we get another bad gypsy moth year.
Was anything, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I'm on the CLWA board, and obviously we're so anti any kind of chemicals or whatever on that board, but they are also recommending this treatment for people who are having the infestation because of the devastation that can happen when these moths get out of control. But there is no guarantee that it's gonna stop them in our area because it's spot treating across a bigger way, but depending on the weather and everything else, this could really have a good effect.
Do we know, I know this has come up and I know I've read about it. I think it was Watershed Association had information about it, but the safety of that method and what it particularly does, I think it targets like the larvae as opposed to like specifically the gypsy moths or something like that. Because I know I have a lot of people, as you said, Linda, are concerned about safety anytime you spray, and I would imagine that that will certainly come up. So if we have that, and I certainly can look it up myself, but if we have that information, looks like we do. I didn't see it.
We do. It's attached to, so I was going to try to pull it up. There's actually a gentleman on our ECB. His name is Gary Cockersberger. I may have messed up his last name, but he is, he's extremely familiar with this. That's his background. Very, very smart individual. That's why I want to see if I can get him to join us tomorrow to talk to you a little bit about. He actually has an email, a letter that we actually attach to the agenda. You know what? Instead of me scrolling through all these pages, I have a shortcut. Hang on a second.
I can remember back when I was practicing organic gardening here at the farm that I used to use BT. It was a material that was completely acceptable to the organic farming community, the Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's very effective. But again, you have to get it to these critters in order for it to have an effect on them.
They, instead of taking a lot of time right now, but yes. So to answer your question, it does target the larvae. I do know that, and not supposedly other things. The other thing is the aerial spraying, and this is being recommended by the DEC. The aerial spraying, the gentleman would actually fly in and out of the Canandaigua airport, and it's very, very targeted. The other thing I would want to do is if we move forward with this, definitely want to send notices out to all the neighbors, obviously, in the surrounding that, hey, if nothing else, so that they know that there's going to be a low flying airplane that's going to be going over Ananda and provide them with information, everything. But I'm not the expert on this. I'd much prefer Gary to be able to answer those types of questions. I want to see if he can join us tomorrow. Gary, you probably thought I was putting you on the spot, didn't you?
One of the things that I think might be interesting is to have a way to sign people up as Ononda neighbors, so that we can target them in the future to let them know about different events or different situations at Ononda. But the other thing that I know from CLWA is that the cost of spraying additional properties isn't that much more. So if people in the neighborhood are having issues, they may be able to get onto kind of the route and get their trees sprayed if they're concerned about them. Because I was reading on Facebook, certainly last year, when people were having all of the larvae munching the leaves off their trees and pooping all over their properties, how disgusting it was for many people. So.
Yeah.
I know here, we had a lot of them flying around here last summer when when they were at their peak, and we've never had them here at our house.
Yeah.
Amazing to see how many were out there.
And I had no idea what their egg masses look like until somebody showed me. It looks like somebody swiped a little peanut butter on your tree.
Yeah.
And if you see those, scrape them off and dispose of them, burn them or something.
Yeah, and really some of them got quite large. I mean, some of them that I saw down at Ononda, some of them were very, very large. And it was just crazy, the number on the trees. I mean, we even talked at the Environmental Conservation Board, they say you can use soapy water. And so that's all well and good. And we do that for the cabins, that sort of thing. But, there's really no way to treat 70 acres of woods and the up in the air and everything else.
Yeah.
With that type of thing. So
Okay.
the property, so if you were looking at an aerial image of Ononda, the property that's closest to Barnes Road on the border on the south side, we've been in communication. I've been in communication with them for the last couple of months relative to a couple of different issues. And I did let them know that we were talking about this and that this was on the agenda. The property to the north, I believe, has already signed up with the largest portion of the property to the north of the Ononda parcel has already signed up for this.
To be
same-
sprayed. Yeah.
Good.
All right, so jump back over here. But I will see if I can get Gary to join us. I'll send him a reminder. Just want to make sure I didn't skip a resolution. I think this is the, yeah. This next one is we've had, well, the resolution kind of explains that the governor had issued an executive order last year, and Pam Post can certainly touch on this in the meeting if you would like, but the governor had issued an executive order that originally said that the exemption was going to automatically renew, but then there was some discussion about maybe in certain cases it shouldn't automatically renew, such as if the property has changed hands and those sorts of things. So this will give Pam a little bit more flexibility in basically to require renewal application when it's needed in those particular situations. Like for instance, if the property has changed hands and the person may no longer qualify for the exemption. That's that one. The next one is related, kind of, sort of. We've had a couple of tax bills that have come in as we're in tax bill season here that need to be corrected. Some of them were properties that should not have been taxed. They were tax exempt, those sorts of things. So one of which is one of our own property. Actually, I guess, yeah, the one is our property, Gooddale Road. That's Pierce Park, actually. The Parkside Drive one. Do you know that one, Kate, off the top of your head? I don't know that one off the top of my head.
That one's the school district, Doug.
Oh, the school district. Thank you. Yes, thank you. That's it. Yeah. So, all right. Any questions on those?
No.
The next one, we had emailed you guys about the water project. This is us basically loaning the water project $1.5 million from the general fund.
Temporarily.
Yes, investment fund, not reserve, but investment fund. But loaning that $1.5 million to that project for right now. But Kate or Jim, I know you guys had, or Terry, I know you guys had a water project meeting yesterday. Is there anything you want to share about that? And Kate, I know you were working on trying to follow up on the WIA funds, but.
I don't have anything more to offer than the fact that I know that Greg has submitted to EFC the comment about the project being approved by the DOH and an easement that we've also given them the receipt that said it's been filed. I know Kate has reached out to, I can't remember the person's name, and I believe is still waiting for a response.
Yeah, her name is Laura. She's been our main contact at EFC, and I reached out to her yesterday to confirm that she had to have everything she needed so that we could start drawing funds, and kind of tried to push it along, but it's a state, so we'll see.
So from a finance standpoint, if we don't get the money, what do we do?
We'll have to go ahead and do a bond anticipation note. So we actually put that, I mean, because we can't let it go for too long without getting some money here. So I put in there a period not to exceed 90 days, at which point in time we'll have to go ahead and do a bond anticipation note. Hopefully we don't have to do that and the WIA money starts flowing. But if we have to, we'll have to do some bans to get us through until we start getting the WIA money.
Can we charge them interest?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
And are we also, do we have additional funds that might be available to loan to ourselves again on a temporary basis to prevent or to kind of prolong the date that we would do our ban?
Well, maybe after we get through tax season. I mean, it is, the timing is such that we may have some extra money that we would traditionally use at the end of the year. But let's let that settle out.
Yeah,
for
we'll
the next 60
evaluate it
days.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, based on the meeting yesterday, a lot of the expenses, the large expenses, we have paid, and like this month, the pay apps are much, much smaller. They had been around $500,000 the last couple months, and the two I received this month are barely 250,000. So based on the conversation yesterday with the contractors, it sounds like they have ordered most of their materials. It was heavy at the front for those materials, but now that they're on site, they're installing. And so the costs are down a little bit right now. We're in kind of a lull. And then towards the very end, that's when the final will come in. So we are in kind of a spot right now where we can float for with one
A little while.
a little while. If we can get EFC running in the next 60 days, that'd be ideal.
Perfect.
I do know from other seminars I've been attending that the state will be releasing more funds in the first quarter due to more revenue coming in than was anticipated from sales tax money, which they believe was as a direct result of CARES money, which people spent more because they had more. But anyway, the money which had been withheld, the aid to localities, municipalities, things like that, was 20%. It will be withheld at 5%, which for us on that item is not a lot of money, but the point is they're going to be releasing in the first quarter of this year a lot of that money.
And that mirrors what we've seen also with the just huge onslaught. I was having a conversation with Emily Columbus yesterday. I mean, there's just an incredible number of grant opportunities from the state that have just opened up that, you know, making up for lost time. But there's a lot of different things that we're trying to explore all of a sudden too. So.
Of course, it could shut back down because the state is relying on at least $6 billion in federal aid and hoping for $15 billion in federal aid of unencumbered funds. So we shall see.
I guess it would be easy for the state to exercise grants, to grant grants, especially if they're not going to give you the money. So put it on paper. Cash in hand is what counts.
Speaking of sales tax, Kate, you sent me an email yesterday. We got our sales tax fourth quarter is what, 1.2 million, I believe.
It was 1.2 and a half, just about 1.248, I believe.
That's
So
pretty big, isn't it?
higher than we anticipated.
By a lot, yeah.
I just grabbed my December agenda real quick. I was going to look because we had done a resolution. I want to say we had we'd either planned for either 750
Yeah,
or
that's my recollection.
something or other like that. So it is at least 250, maybe even a $500,000 higher. So
Right. Well, and that's why I say before we would ever just jump, well, and I know you would do this, Doug, before you jump to bond anticipation. No, let's look at what, you know, temporary loans, especially if we consider that we're still going to get the WIA grant. Now, if we start to worry that we're not, let's go for the bonds while they're cheap. But
Yep.
all right. Speaking of grants, this next one, Jim, you want to touch on this? This was, I know, something you were working on.
I'm working on a grant with Emily from MRB. The grant itself is for the Green Initiative Grant Program for water meters. It's to pay for the upgrade of our existing meters to the, what I call the cellular endpoint meters, because they're able to alert not us, but the resident of water leaks or mass usage, freezing, pressure, reverse flows, and the federal government sees that as a way to save energy and water consumption. So $4,500, MRB is going to help us write a grant. There's no limit on the amount of money at this time you can ask for water meters. So it's a 75-25% match. So if we were to say we need 400,000 roughly in meters, we would only end up paying over 100,000 for the water meters to be replaced in our town. And we get up to 75% of the grant returned to us from the program.
and we already have a program convert our meters, right? I mean, we approved that a while back?
We do, but this would help pay for that cost.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
And what did we say that total cost was gonna be?
It's around $500,000.
500,000? And so then we would hope that we could maybe even get 75% of it, maybe not all, but that would be great.
Correct.
That was the thing that in this resolution that I felt was missing, was what was the size of the grant we were going after? You know, as I looked at it, the question that was still lurking in my mind was, we're spending this, but what are we trying, what's the size of the pie we're trying to get? And I just wondered if residents would wonder too.
Well, we can always let them know if they ask.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, this next resolution, so I miss Sam. Oh, I miss Sam. I sent her a text message last night. I'm like, what would it take to get you to come back? So dealing with the county with civil service aspects. So we at last month actually last 2 meetings I think we've had, we've talked about these positions, and obviously we had a conversation executive session at the end of the last meeting. But one of the things that the county department of HR has asked me to do is to create for Sam and Eric, both helping us temporarily, temporary part-time positions. So it frees up our full-time positions so that they can canvass and then advertise that we have these 2 vacancies. So that's what this resolution allowing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was like, why are we only replacing Eric with a part-time person? And so now I understand better.
Yeah. Okay, the next one here, Jim, I don't know if you're still there. We need to do a phase 1. We've been talking about the Outhouse Park West playground, the inclusive playground here. And we need to do as we're going through, working our way through seeker, we do need to do a phase 1A, 1B survey of the property. That has not been done, so this would allow us to go ahead and move forward with that. There is money budgeted in this 21 budget for all of these types of things that you're going to start seeing that are going to start popping up. The project is moving forward. We've had some progress meetings, and they're very excited. They continue to raise money and get sponsors for different pieces of equipment. They're hoping that they can really get things going this year. But Jim, is there anything else that you want? You're working more of the engineering side of things on it.
We're currently just waiting for the DEC to give us final approval on our stormwater management, how we're going to handle the runoff. I'm meeting with Happiness House in February. I'm going to speak to them about the easement the town needs along the, I'll call it the northwest boundary of the property for the driveway and road be put on. And I've got a lot of fill that we can haul in to bring the site up to grade for no charge at the where the ball field will go, or I'm sorry, the playground will go. We've been working with Ontario County for sewer. That seems pretty straightforward. Nothing other than it's going to be deep and kind of expensive. The sewer main is 18 feet in the ground out there, so that's not easy to get down to. Really, we're just, once we get DEC approval, I'll start doing the site work for stormwater. So we get that done and out of the way, so then we have something to drain the water to for the site work.
Is this something we would have had to do anyway in order to, build the ball fields we were talking about putting over there?
We should have done it. Don't know whether or not it's always happened in the past, but it should have been done.
Right.
Okay.
Speaking of that, I also wanted to share with you. So, that's just like seeker, right? So seeker should be done anytime a municipality takes an action, even aerial spraying. The town of Canandaigua was not exempt from the state environmental quality review. And so that's why I did that, the short form. And there's type 2 actions and type 1 actions, et cetera. But when you get into construction like this, the seeker definitely needs to be done. And that would include this component. Additionally, Lance from MRB is working on putting together the long form environmental assessment form for us for seeker. And one of the things as we're going through that process and working on putting that together, one of the things that has been discovered, I would say, is that we cannot find an actual resolution from 2010 when the town board would have officially declared this land as park land. There was state, and interestingly enough, ironically, I actually worked on this project on the state side with Brian. So I knew that there was state legislation because I had worked on it. And the state legislation actually required that the town of Canandaigua designate that land as parkland for the state legislation to be valid. But it looks like there was a discussion and maybe a motion was made in a town board meeting, but there was actually no resolution. So I think when it gets to the point of we need to do seeker on this, maybe next month, what I had talked with Lance about and Gene and Jim here a little bit about is bringing you a resolution acknowledging the town board's intent from that time period to declare that as parkland, just so that there's something in black and white. Because they would have had to do it as part of the state legislation. Just so you know, the reason why state legislation, Terry, I think you were on the board, you can jump in here, but there was an alienation of parkland over at Outhouse Park. So that requires state legislation to do that. And as part of that, the town had to acquire additional parkland. It was a requirement as part of that parkland alienation process. So.
Yeah. My memory's a little bit vague of that 11 years ago, but sometimes I have trouble last week. But yeah, I mean, that was the intent, the absolute intent. You know, whether the follow through was executed 100%, apparently not. So
anyway, precursor coming to a screen near you soon. So and then this last resolution, Kathy, do you want to touch on this?
Sure. So Select Fabricators had reached out to Pam to see if they could help them with relocating. So Pam asked me to come along since it was in the town. So I knew that they had done this, provided frontline workers with masks early on. So two things. Jim told me that we purchased about 500 masks for our workers early on. What they did was I'm sorry, I'm still not awake. They switched production from their usual items to making masks and selling them at cost very early on. And they're doing very well. Their business is doing very well. And so they're looking for new property and they want to stay in the town. So I also thought there would be some opportunity for the LDC to sort of get involved. I reached out to Brooke Meyer, who is MRB's person that we're working with on the CLDC. That's just a small thing. Nothing has happened on that. They had said, the owner said that the town has been very helpful, but they want to try to not move out. And they're having some trouble with finding an appropriate property that doesn't need to be rezoned. They found a piece of property, but they lost it, et cetera, et cetera. That's another story on that.
Where are they located today, Kathy?
So they're on North Road. So between North Bloomfield and so you'll see there's like a marine place. There's a bunch of just past, if you're coming down North
Are they
Bloomfield.
near Marine Blue?
Yes, yep, in that complex of buildings.
All right.
They're very, very nice, and they were very helpful early on in the pandemic, so I thought it would be nice. I presented them with a certificate of appreciation, but I thought this would be nice as well. What I didn't put in here is that they also were manufacturing, and this is a sad part of what they were doing, was they also manufacture a covering for caskets that helps protect soils from the bad things which are released when bodies break down, and their numbers of course, as you can imagine, went through the roof last year. And they continue to provide at, they again switched production to make many more of those. And what they make there on a regular basis is pretty amazing. They make pop-up tents that a lot of like Secret Service, DEA, when they're on site, they can pop up tents which prevent people from reading the signals from any of their equipment. So they were very gracious, and they were very appreciative that the town is willing to try to work with them to keep them here. So there'll be more on that. And so that's what that's all about.
All right.
You know, Kathy, that whole issue of locating in the town of Canandaigua, let me just share something here with you real quick. We get notices all the time, and I kid you not, I get probably a notice once or twice a week from GRE, Greater Rochester Enterprise, about business opportunities, businesses that are looking for locations to locate, manufacturing, industrial, retail, you name it, the gamut. It's kind of a good and bad thing. One of the not so great things is we don't have any vacant, empty, large buildings. But that's also a great thing, right? That we don't have vacant, large, empty buildings. And a lot of these businesses, they're not willing to go through the process of new construction. They want to get in, they want to get moving, they want to start rocking and rolling and doing their thing, manufacturing whatever it is that they manufacture. So a lot of times that kind of keeps us out of the loop. Working jointly with the city does have more vacant buildings and stuff, but we're very fortunate that we really don't have, even in terms of retail space, we don't have much in the way of vacancies. Even the plaza that struggled for years now up on 332 has a new owner, Jeff Cook, and I've met with him, and they're pretty well full now. So it's a great problem, I guess,
Yeah.
to have, but we
Yeah,
do.
they're looking to build a new building. They're growing
Yeah.
so much that what they've done right now is they've sort of pieced together. There's like bridges between these buildings. They want to have one big facility. So
yeah, they're one of the ones that we have been talking to. They're interested in the whole area around the airport and that sort of thing, which is great, especially from a new construction. But there's a lot of others that unfortunately we just don't have the space. We've got a restaurant right now that's very interested in being in the greater Canandaigua community, either city or town. And truthfully, we're having trouble finding a vacant spot that meets their needs. So, you know, with the vacant building, that's the issue, is a lot of times people are looking for a vacant building. So,
What about the Ponderosa?
yeah, there's some issues, I guess, with that building that it's kind of scaring some people off. So. We do have, though, speaking of that, next to that is KFC. And I'll just share with you a side note here real quick. We're having ongoing conversations with KFC. They're very interested in locating an additional facility, restaurant in Uptown, somewhere in the area there around Tom Walls. So they're seriously looking at some properties in that area. So. Okay, the last final resolution here is the appointment of Rocky Palomini to the vacant position on the ECB. He did interview with the ECB, and the ECB had recommended his appointment to that position. We also still have another current vacancy on the ECB, hoping that one of these two people that or one of these vacancies, as we fill these, hoping that one of these individuals would consider also chairing that ECB for us. I did facilitate the last meeting of the ECB, and I will again next month also. And I've met with the individual ECB members, and they're all willing to pitch in and help out, but no one is willing to take on the chair position at this time. But that might change as this comes as there's fill up. So.
All right.
I did, and then minutes, and then the bills here. I did look up real quick. We did budget $1 million in sales tax, that extra $1 million in sales tax. So that means we had an extra approximately $250,000 that came in. So. Okay. I don't know if anybody has anything else on that. I did have one more thing I wanted to bring up with you just real quick. Does anybody else have anything on the agenda?
Nothing on the agenda, but before I forget, just let me say, can we also touch on our audit preparedness? Not just how we think we're doing relative to getting the expenses closed out for the year. But
Kate,
your
do
thing too.
you want to also touch on maybe the pool cash situation and just so that they're aware of that too?
Yeah. So those budget transfers was part of closing out for the year. And then Doug and I spoke the other day about appropriations of fund balance as well. All the smaller funds have been tied up for the end of the year. And the main funds are general AA, highway DA, and the SW 500. Those are the ones that have most of the expenses here on this agenda. So as soon as these process through, we can look at the final numbers for those three larger funds. And I think we're in a really good spot. Last year, right around this time, we had Erica from Bonadio out to help with some of the entries and the year-end process. So I've been referring back to those notes and making those entries for accruals and the type of things we need to do to make sure that we're ending the year correctly. I think we're in a really good spot as far as preparedness and being ready for them to come in. I think we're in a good spot. And then as far as the cash goes, when we originally set up info, we were set up on a pooled cash environment, which put all of our money, no matter which bank account it was in, into one separate fund, which you would see sometimes on reports. It was called the ZZ fund. And the problem with that is that when it was originally established, the person who was here previously had kept the main bank account, our investment savings number one, separately tracked from that pooled cash. So it created this environment that was a hybrid that really ultimately didn't work correctly, because that's not how pooled cash was meant to work. And because of that, I have had a very extremely difficult time reconciling our cash accounts directly to the bank. And that it has been a very complicated web to untangle. And ultimately, the conversation that Doug and I had about resolving it the best way was to go back to a do to, do from environment, which is the maybe more standard way of tracking cash. And what that does is it takes the money out of that ZZ fund and it puts every single fund's cash in its own cash accounts that are separately tracked in each fund. As far as entries or work-wise, it doesn't really make a difference as far as what we need to do to track it. It's just a matter of which lines we're identifying. And so the last week, this past week, the week of the 18th, I spent the whole entire week on the phone with tech support, and we made that transition. So for 2020, everything is still in pooled cash, but January of 21, everything has been transferred into the funds themselves, going to allow us to really dig into each and every fund, make sure those accounts are really tight, and reconcile that with the bank. So that's the goal, to be completed by the end of February, which won't really make too much of a difference for our audit because they're looking at 2020, but it's going to put us in a much better position going forward, I believe, where we won't continue to have this confusion with the pooled cash and the way things are being accounted for.
Okay. And do we expect to have our recommendation for appropriations by the next meeting, or what are you thinking?
I really, truly, based on looking at the numbers, I believe that the appropriations for the three main funds are going to be lower than the budgeted amounts.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, based on the sales tax that came in and the numbers that I have looked at so far, I don't think the board is going to need to take any action because those appropriations are going to be lower than what has already been approved. And we'll show you those final numbers. We'll get that on the report so you can see those. But I think we're actually going to end up contributing to fund balance in every case.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So it won't be lower, it'll actually be zero if, you know, in certain places.
Yeah, highway looks like it's gonna be really, really low. I think A might need a little bit, and SW looks like it's gonna be over.
Yeah. And are we also making recommendations for putting money aside into the various, I can't remember what they're called, in government accounting, where we put it aside like for parks or for,
Reserve. We did that last month or at the last meeting. We
are
already
we,
did that.
are we expecting to have some more because of this appropriation change or no?
Well, let's
You know,
get the final numbers first.
okay,
before
all
we-
right.
But then the other thing is too, you know, a lot of times we bring you this monster resolution with encumbrances and all that stuff. And
Yep.
Kate's been working on that, and you've got it down. It sounds like very, very low, which is awesome. That was
Yeah.
our goal this year.
February 8th, and it just got tight with having the 2020 bills being in for the 29th to also get the encumbrances finalized. But I did finalize that yesterday for the February 8th meeting. And I think we had 6 total encumbrances that were less than $35,000.
Wow, great.
Yeah, so everybody did a really great job of getting those bills in and keeping track. The purchase order system, I think, really has
Helped a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you have a good system.
Those encumbrances used to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's-
And we would miss them and then the auditors would find them. So it was
Yes.
like that.
Yes. So that's great. Hey, there's actually 2 things I want to touch on. Kathy, I know you've got a note there. You might need to step away here in a second. Do you have a second to talk about land?
I do. That was actually an old note. I'm back again, but I may have to leave
sorry.
it. But I got time now, so.
So here, I wanted to have a conversation. We're going to have obviously a town board meeting tomorrow. I would anticipate when we get to the public hearings, quite a few people will be making comments relative to the 2 potential pieces of property that we're looking at. And we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for information relative to the appraisals. The appraiser has taken extra time intentionally to really document and do his due diligence relative to the Tishner Point parcel. So we have not even started the appraisal for the other parcel yet. So we realistically, that'd probably be like February or March by the time we get that number, honestly, if he goes through the same process that he has for the Tishner. I don't have all of the details of the Tishner Point appraisal yet. And keep in mind, I need to also get the actual appraisal that the seller is also doing. But I do anticipate, based on recent conversation, that the information would be that the average of the 2 appraisals will probably fall within that range now. With our appraiser coming in with a number that is a little bit lower, taking all things into account, including the deed restrictions that we know about and everything, and really doing our due diligence. With the seller's appraisal a little bit higher, but the average of the 2 is what we had said, probably falling within that range. So I'm getting a lot of requests to release that appraisal information once we receive it. I'm a little bit concerned about that, and I wanted to have a conversation with you. One of my thoughts, and I had talked with the appraiser, and Kathy and I had a very, very brief conversation yesterday, is I'd asked the appraiser if he would be willing to present his appraisal, the appraiser that we hired, if he would be willing to present that to you on February the 8th, and he has agreed to do that. I think it's going to be important for him to walk through his methodologies. He's the certified, he's the expert, not me, and for him to walk through that and explain that. I just wanted to kind of get your guys' thoughts on, should we wait to release it until after he has had a chance to present that in a public meeting on February 8th, which is a week away, or what do you want to do? I guess I'm just kind of looking for a little direction. And if you'd prefer, we can also talk about this tomorrow, but I'm just kind of looking for some feedback.
So I've been thinking about, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I've been thinking about it since our brief conversation yesterday. I'm inclined to say that if the people who will have given you this information feel that it's in a form that can be presented to people, that we could present it to people, but at the hearing, say, we'll do a presentation on that. We're not going to take comment on that at this time. so that everyone has a chance to listen to the presentation. Or maybe, I don't know, something along those lines, because I know there's a lot of pressure to get that information out there. And I think being as transparent as possible will go a long way, even though we're going to run the risk of having people make comments or have their minds set in stone before they get the full presentation. So if we can have, maybe at our next meeting, not this one tomorrow, if we can release that information, if it's available, and then have us at that next, if we continue the hearing, which I assume that we are. I think we said that we are. So take comment on that issue the next time.
So are you saying take comment on it at the meeting in March? Because if it's going to be presented on February 8th, our next meeting is in March, I think. And are we
good
continuing
question.
on the hearing until March? So, because I feel like people are going to want to digest it, but it's better to have them digest it after a presentation than to try to scan through it and understand it themselves. So it feels like maybe if we're going to have it as a presentation.
Could we
should-
do a special meeting just for that presentation?
Oh, that might be an idea. And then it could be on Zoom and people could really hear the.
Just as a presentation, not as.
Right. And the presentation could be on the web so people could look at it. Because there seems like there's a fair amount of angst and real information and fake information, not fake, but anxiety.
Right,
about it, which,
misinformation. Right?
yeah, which it would be helpful to have it out there ahead of the February meeting, or else we should probably extend the hearings one more month.
When is the seller, when's their appraisal due? Do we have a time frame?
Anytime. I mean, I wouldn't be shy, like seriously, probably even this week or next. I mean,
Would they release it
Or would they
before
make the
this one
presentation?
is released?
would they, so one of the
I mean, I
things
could
that
see, so that one does, I mean, you know what I'm saying? So one doesn't float out and then another one comes out. Is it going to be a joint
I need
release?
to talk to them. That's a great question, Jared. I need to talk to them and find out if they're comfortable in doing that.
Especially if the one that you expect to have a presentation from is the lower of the two, then people are going to be like, why are you paying above that if they don't hear from both sides of the story?
It's not significantly. I would say it's, well, I mean, it is, but in the grand scheme of things as a percentage, I think that be plus or minus $200,000. So,
Yeah, I thought that they were both going to be ready, on or about the same day, but we don't know about the sellers, correct?
yeah, I don't have all of the information for that. I've got to have some additional conversations today about that and when I can expect all that. All I've got is we believe that it's going to come in based on what we're hearing, ballpark type
It
stuff.
feels like if we can, we should share it. I mean, we want people to have information that is real. And the only way they can get that is if we share it. So.
Right. We can definitely share the one that we've hired. The only concern I have, and I know you guys have gotten a lot of comments too. I have had a ton of people contact me with incorrect information.
Yeah.
I even had a call yesterday from somebody that said, why are you increasing my taxes 30%? I'm like, that's never been the plan, those types of things. So that's the only concern is if we release it without presenting it, do we run the risk of it being misinterpreted?
I would think we should have that presentation. And when the guy steps through the process, he's going to get down to the bottom line, say, therefore, this is what I am saying that property is worth. And also have the other number at that time. So that everybody, us and the public, gets that information at the same time. You put any numbers out ahead of time, and it's just going to
Just
really
add
wind
fuel.
up with the same thing.
People are going to cherry pick. I like the
I mean-
idea of having them both. Here's what
Both at the
they
same
both
time.
are. There's ours. This is what the figure is going forward based on these criteria.
I mean, we could hold off getting their official report until then, but of course, if we get it before then, it's subject to FOIL and all those other things. And there are people asking for it every day. We don't want to put Doug in a position of having to say, well, it's sort of ready. if it's, that's why I say if it's ready, and I don't know that that's the case. I don't even know what ready would be qualified as. We just have to be careful to not put any of us in the position of not putting it out there once it's asked for or request by FOIL, because then we look like we're hiding something, which we're clearly not. And yes, we might have to deal with backlash and people having wrong information, but that's what we deal with all the time. If we want to say that it's really not complete until we receive the other one, that might be fair, because one appraisal without the other is sort of in a vacuum. So, you know, if ours were to come down at, you know, whatever, and theirs was come much higher, which I would highly doubt, then that again ends the inquiry about whether this would, but that's my personal feeling. If someone asks me if it's available and I know that it is, what am I going to say?
One other idea just to throw out there based on this conversation is if you are all available next Thursday, February 4th, for the Finance Committee meeting that we would have prior to that town board agenda coming out, what if I had the appraiser see if he could do a presentation that we could record at the finance meeting? That way people have the information and have a chance to look at it before the public hearing on the 8th.
That'd be good.
But would you just have the one price or the appraisals?
Let me try to get both of them. I can't answer that right now, Gary. I just don't know, but let me have some conversations, see if I can find out.
Because I mean, we certainly don't want to confuse the public and just giving them piecemeal stuff. And I wouldn't think.
I think one of the things that we also have to keep in mind is we did not hire the seller's appraiser. So he may not be willing to do a presentation. Now, we could certainly have the information, but the appraiser that we hired is the one that I asked for him to actually present it, and he's willing to do that.
Right,
Well, I
and
would
that's
think
really,
that the methods that they use must be quite similar. I mean, there has to be a methodology that these guys follow in coming up with a number.
Yeah,
So
they're
if the
right.
guy that we hired could present, here's how I do it, and then this is the number, and someone from our town board, our community can say, and we got this number from, the seller's appraisal. If we have that information next Thursday, sure, put it out there. But, we're only talking about a week here. It's not like it's going to be 2 months out in the future. This is, if you get the information next week, sometime toward the end of next week, and we're meeting the following Monday, you only got a couple of days there. I mean, I would think people could, hold their water for a while.
Yeah.
that answer your question?
If we did it next week, my schedule changes starting on Monday, and I have a 7:25 class, which I'm really excited for. Seniors at 7:25 in the morning. So I jump in about, not you seniors, other like 12th grade seniors. So like 8:10 I could jump in. So I'll just jump in late, which is no big deal.
Oh, yeah, if it's 8:10, that's.
8:10, yeah. So it'll just be a few minutes late.
Well, I anticipate a very light agenda for February 8th since we have this meeting now. So maybe we could go through the agenda first and then have the appraisal presentations.
Yeah.
And then we'll record it. We can actually record it and broadcast it live on Facebook. That way it's there available for everybody, and then they can have the information. I just need to Jared and Gary's point. I got to just follow up on the other appraisal and see if I can get that in time for that.
Right. Or even the bottom line on that one, but also find out if the guy is available for Thursday morning.
Yep. All right. So I think we should probably rehash this a little bit tomorrow during the town board meeting, but let's kind of maybe have that as a game plan, at least, that we would present those next Thursday, that information, hopefully. And I'll see what I can find out today, so we have that for tomorrow.
And if there's a FOIL issue in the meantime, maybe you can even check with Chris Nadler to see, I know with FOIL requests, if it's not in its final form, sometimes you can hold off until, I used to be a FOIL officer at one time. So my understanding is, if the presentation is part of the final form, that might be a way to let people know, yes, it would be available and we will provide it.
On the state.
So,
the town clerk has some flexibility as well in her response to the information. I believe it's 20 days that she has to provide the information. So even if she were to receive a request this week, you would still have a meeting and be able to present within that time frame for her providing it. She just has to acknowledge the request and let them know when she anticipates giving them that information.
I just don't want any of us to be in a situation, so we'll make sure we do it all by the book.
I'll tell the guy we don't want the information before next Thursday. We want you to present it next Thursday, and there's no need to do anything in the interim.
That's true too.
I'll talk to those individuals today.
Provided that he's able to have that number by then and that present his format and the methodology he follows.
Yep. Okay.
It would be nice to have him on board with it first, yes.
We have to make sure he's available too.
One more thing I just want to share with you. I know some of you had expressed a interest or questions about the potential Morel project over at the corner of 21 and at the corner of 21 and 21. Terry, Planning Public Works, is it next Friday, February 5th?
Yes, 10 o'clock.
Okay, so I've asked Terry if we can push this through the Planning Public Works Committee. There is a request that's going to need to come before the town board relative to density. They have approval to construct on what is referred to often as the Miller property, which is this property here. Just for point of reference, here's Miller Park right here, and then this was Miller property. They have since entered into an agreement with the adjacent landowner, and they're looking to actually come back and do an amendment to their approval before the planning board to come all the way out to Paris Street Extension. You can see it actually overall greatly increases the green space, open space to 76% of the total project instead of it being so dense on the one parcel. But there is a request that's going to need to come before the town board. I'll explain it more in the committee meeting instead of taking up a lot of your time right now, but I wanted you to be aware of that. I'll send some stuff out by email to you so you can also see it. And the developer is planning to attend the meeting on February 5th. But the request is going to be relative specifically to density. There's a portion of the town code that says that the town board may grant density. And so basically, the long and the short of it is they could get approval from the planning board. If the planning board grants it to construct 80 homes on this property, they would like to construct 92. And so those extra 12 homes, that's the piece that kicks over to the town board. So I'll talk about that more at the committee meeting, but I wanted you to be aware of it. So.
Okay.
All right. I think that's all I have. Sorry, Linda. I think we got sidetracked.
Oh, gosh, no, I think, when we're all together and officially together, I think, we have to cover what we can. So I don't have anything else. Anybody else want to bring up anything?
No.
No.
All right, so we will be back together as finance team next Thursday. And we'll be at the town board meeting, obviously, tomorrow morning. So
See you in 23 hours.
I'll be there, be square.
Countdown begin.
All right, thanks, everyone.
All right, see you
Have a
guys.
good
Have a
weekend,
great
everybody.
day. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Goodbye.